After the wide open spaces and paved runoff of Barcelona, the drivers are forced to change gears and tackle the old school Road Atlanta. While these classes of sports cars have frequently raced here in real life, the track often shows no mercy and offers little room for mistakes. Will this catch out the unflappable Squirrel and Quero? Let's find out as we get ready to watch round 6 of the PRL Sportscar series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Road Atlanta is often compared to a roller coaster with the way the circuit undulates over a lap. Let's head to our track guide to learn more. Welcome to Road Atlanta, the scene of incredible sports car racing for decades and the home to the Petit Le Mans. This is a track that has proven itself to be worthy of attention on a world stage. With it being situated only an hour northeast of Atlanta, Georgia, the circuit is in a prime location. But despite its flagship race, in contrast to the real Le Mans, the full course is a measly 2.5 miles long. The club layouts also clock in at just under 2 miles. Packed within this small lap length is a series of technical and challenging corners, some of which can be race-ending even when small mistakes are made. Turn 1 is a fast sweeper which compresses the car into the track, but the high speeds mean that when you go off, you typically go off in a big way. Turn 3 is notorious for its curved entry into a blind apex. Too far inside and you face a cut course penalty. Too far outside and you're likely to spin out. Then there's the unassuming Turn 5. The wide curbing lures you into getting greedy, but the close walls on either side gobble up cars and spit them out as a crumpled heap. With all the tricky fast turns, that's not to say that there aren't passing opportunities. The main one comes at the chicane at the bottom of the backstretch. The huge downhill drop into the turn makes outbraking yourself quite easy though, so be careful. The whole thing wraps up with the frightening final corner. With nothing but a giant wall right to the outside as cars fly through at high speed, it's not often that wrecks are small. Boasting a wide swath of series over its history, everything from NASCAR to Indy Lights and of course SIMMSA, the main use of the track is SCCA events and driving schools. No wonder this place is popular both in real life and here on the iRacing service. Fans will no doubt get to enjoy many more years of action at this incredible track. DJ, we've arrived at the second half of the season. Things have really kicked in, and here we show up at one of the classics in American sports car racing.
Indeed we do, Joe, and as often is the case in this series, traffic management is going to be key, and there is no other area of this track where it is more important than the S's. Diving down from about turn 4 all the way up to turn 5, that is such a hard area to get by when you are just hot lapping, but if you throw some slower GTE traffic in front of these prototypes, it becomes a very, very challenging proposition for everybody. So everybody going to have to be very, very careful through there. But as you can see, this track is not just technical sections. There are some good overtaking opportunities. Specifically, the best one we're going to see is going down into turn 10 off of that long backstretch. You rocket out of the turn 6, turn 7 complex and maybe get a draft pass going in there. You can also see a little bit of passing going into turn 6, but I think that is a little less likely. I will also say, Joe, depending on how the jump these drivers get out of that turn 10 area, we've also seen some passing and some very hairy passing at that going down into turn 1.
Yeah, it takes a brave driver to execute, but it does happen. Before we get to the racing, let's talk about how today's race is brought to you by SimMSA. Simulation Motorsports Affinity provides many consulting services, from completely customizing simulators to managing teams, individual drivers, and complete events. They're working hard to bring everyone together at one place to support and promote sim racing internationally. Find out how you can bridge the gap between virtual and real motorsports at SimMSA.net.
The PRL Sports Car Series is also brought to you by NinjaTrader. Ready to compete against the financial markets? Supporting over 60,000 users across the globe, NinjaTrader provides award-winning trading software and brokerage services. NinjaTrader is always free to use for advanced charting, back testing, and trade simulation. Visit NinjaTrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance.
Today's broadcast is also proudly sponsored by ButtKicker. ButtKicker products add an incredible immersion and realism to any game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Check them out at thebuttkicker.com. As we head over to our championship table, at the top of the LMP2s, it is Mauricio Cuero, who has extended himself quite far ahead of TNC Leighton, partly due to the drop weeks now being counted. But Leighton has been running a pretty good season with 2 podiums so far, including a second place last round. Cal Quinn not far behind him with unfortunately not the greatest of races back at Barcelona. Ben Lafter jumping up into the top 5 this time, so tip of the hat to Ben. As we now head over to the GTE Drivers' Championship, you've got Don Skwerek up at the top of that. Now, Michael Ross has been keeping the screws to Don a lot more here in this fight, as he's taken a win himself, but has also been very consistently finishing right behind Don, and so he hasn't lost many points to him at this stage. Rafael Russo is just 21 points back behind Skwerek, and then you get a bit of a gap down to Moraes and a tie for 5th between Lowendick and O'Donnell Lines. What about the 2 teams championship here, DJ?
Well, in that LMP2 team standings, as you can see there, Joe, Punto CL Racing Rojo with an absolutely mega lead over Vector by RSR, 95 points. They are in control of this field. Final Lap Racing sits in 3rd, not really close enough to attack Vector, but they've got to be watching out for their flank because Punto CL Racing Azul is right behind them, only 2 points back. So that's going to be a very, very crucial battle to watch. And then Pure Sims eSports sitting about 30 or so points back from Punto in 5th. Now moving over to the GTE category, in that it's a little bit tighter at the top. L1 Esports only has a 31 point advantage over Vector by RSR and about 11 points back to Davidson. So very tight there. Those could switch around. Team Oblivion also knocking on the door there. They're only about 20 points back of Davidson as well, but they've got to watch behind them as Radicals Online only 4 points behind in 5th.
And of course, for our LMP2 GTE Sports Car Series, we are in round 6, as I mentioned. There's the 2 different classes, which is obviously the Dallara P217 and then GTE class cars, of which there's various makes that you can choose from. 45 minutes that they'll be competing out here today. It is open setup, but they have to watch out for the off tracks. And there's a couple trouble zones for that where you can rack those up easily. If they hit 10, which is very few, they'll get a drive-through penalty and actually get disqualified at 15. There's the bonus points if they're good. They're at the bottom. One of those is the pole position, which it seems that Paulo Munoz provisionally holds that in the prototypes, and Michael Ross, who was actually quicker in warm-up as well over Skwerek, seems to hold that currently with his second lap improving to a 15.5, and he slows down, so he'll have one more lap to try and come back around and go quicker if he wants to. But now we take a look at Horatio Calquin.
Well, and here comes Don Skwerek, Ross's big rival in the championship. He's going to cross over the line with a 15.971. That's going to put him behind Michael Ross. And then here is that other name that we've been calling constantly this season of Rafael Russo. Rafael about a 10th off of his best time. He's going to park it right there for now.
What's interesting to note about Skwerek is even though he's on the front row, he's 4/10 off Ross on that first lap. So he's going to have to stay on it as Christian Eisler on that latest lap gets it down to a 109.4. That's good enough for 3rd place. Our pole sitter on his 3rd time across, a 109 flat, continuing to extend himself over whose latest lap did not count. And he gets bumped down to 3rd because Mauricio Cuero now crosses to take 2nd.
I was waiting for that to happen there from Cuero, the 666 there coming through as well. Ted Lowendick now good battles in the last race. He's about 0.3 off of his best right there, so he's not going to be able to set a good time this time around. Here comes Trepanier coming to the line, about 0.3 slower, not able to improve there.
Skwarek is coming back around. Can he find a lot of pace here and try and take that pole position and bonus point away? No, he goes slower by about 1/10, little less than 1/10 that time through. Still has 2 more attempts if he wants it. This is Ross on his out lap. Now he starts his final flyer.
Well, and Ross is going to be one to watch here, Joe. I was thinking about this in the pre-race. Ooh, is Russo able to improve there by a couple of hundredths? But remember, we have talked a lot about the slipperiness of that Ford GT, how fast it is in a straight line. I think we're seeing the advantages of that down the backstretch for Ross.
Munoz's last lap was not faster. That ends his qualifying, and Mauricio Cuero does go faster. The first driver into the 108 in that prototype class. That gets him the pole.
Oh, my goodness gracious. A mega lap there. Jennifer McDonald doing very well, being in 5th right now. Genet calling it quits after that lap. Let's check out our second place finisher, Tienside Layton. He's going to cross over the line, only move up 1 position.
So then we've got Betty Arsenault, and it looks like that's not going to be any better for him. Trepanier is going to abandon his lap. Thomas Cope, who sits in 4th. His last try does not improve. He is done for the day. Skwarek abandons his final lap. Actually, his 3rd lap, which means his final lap won't be counted either. So he's not going to be able to overtake Michael Ross on raw pace and qualifying. The 67 is just coming down the line, but that is not quicker, although it is off by 1/1000th of his fastest lap. Christian Eisler, quicker on his last go, and that gets him 4th.
And Rafael Russo a little bit down in the order there in 5th. Used to seeing him finishing 2nd or 3rd on the podium. Now we watch Tienside Layton, Mr. Consistency this year, putting in very solid runs to get himself 2nd in that championship. Coming through that turn 10 braking zone and over the bridge. Here he comes.
He's currently last of the qualifiers in the prototypes, and a 1:10.1 is mildly quicker. That's good enough for 7th. It's an improvement, and it will at least give him some track position. Quoting in on his final lap in qualifying does not have that one count, sadly. Let's see, do we have Arsenault here? Is this gonna... Nope, it looks like he's done for the day.
Indeed, coming in. It's a very tricky pit entry here at Road Atlanta. That'll be a story to watch during the race. But now we got to keep our eyes on the L1 Esports driver of Lou Barreto coming to the line. Not able to improve by about 0.02 of a second.
And he does have time for this last qualifying lap, which he does still have if he wants it. I see Johnny Luna out there. So it looks like Johnny and Lou are the only 2 that are able to set times here in this final 1.5 minutes. Luna already coming down the back stretch in that very distinctive pink and gray Chevrolet Corvette, looking for the braking zone. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to take all 4 of his laps. By the time he reaches the line, he's going to run out of qualifying time here. So up and across, he's going to have to hustle. Not sure if this is going to be faster. No, this is definitely too slow. So the 14 will stay put in 17th. That leaves Barreto.
Yeah, Barreto in that very distinctive as well, bright red Ferrari. We saw there Johnny Luna have a big log up coming into turn 10. Let's see if Lou can avoid that same pitfall. He does look like it. Good apex into 10A, out through 10B, swing the car wide under the bridge here. You've got to be careful with that corner. If you get off a little bit, it can come back to bite you. Let's see if Barreto's got a little bit more speed. He does. He is able to improve that time and jump up to 7th.
Couple spots gained at the last time of asking, but that ends our qualifying here for this session. Round 6, as we mentioned, and you can see the sun in the sky, and it's a scorcher. 109 Fahrenheit on the track. It was actually hotter than that a little bit earlier in the warm-up session. as qualifying officially now turns into the grid. So let's head through our drivers and how they wound up. Very small field in the prototypes today. It is Mauricio Cuero who is on the pole with Paulo Munoz starting in second. Jeffrey Ooms in P3 with Christian Eisler in fourth. Then you've got Horatio Calquin starting fifth, followed by David Duino P6. Tiansai Layton managed seventh at the end of his 4 laps, and Nicholas Bernand will start in eighth.
In the pole for that GTE category, it's Michael Ross with Don Squirk to his outside. EJ O'Donnell Lines and Iago Morris are going to make up the second row. Behind them will be Thomas Cope and Rafael Russo. A little bit of a low qualifying there for Rafael. Behind Rafael is going to be Lou Barreto and Jennifer McDonald. Good qualifying for them both. In ninth is James David, and Gabrielle Lavadier will round out your top 10. In 11th is Ted Lowendick, followed by Arnaud Genet in 12th. Vincent Trepanier is 13th, followed by Luis Pime Jr. and Jean-Claude Langlois in 15th. Patrick Arsenault able to bring the car to start out in 16th, followed by Johnny Luna in 17th. And to round out that GTE field, Joe, it's going to be Kwok Nin and Marc-Andre Desjardins.
We have a few onboards today from our drivers. We're going to pull those up here in a second. One of our prototypes going to be giving us one with Horatio Calquin in the 666. There you see his onboard cam on the screen. And we also have Thomas Cope in the 64. One of our GT drivers, another one that'll allow us to actually see his screen as well as his hands and what he's doing from inside the cockpit. All right, what does Teddy have for us today? Oh, I'm disappointed. Oh, well, he has a friend. He's got a friend down there. Looks like RJ, or not, did I say RJD2? I've been around hip hop too long, apparently. BB88 is down there with him, as he's usually gives us at least some sort of treat or surprise here with his onboard cams. And finally, we have Lou Barreto, who is in the number 20 today, also from the GT cars. I do enjoy, even though we already get to see what the drivers see, I don't know, for some reason I like seeing kind of the behind the shoulder shot on these onboard cams.
I agree with you there, Joe. It's really good to be able to kind of check and see how the drivers are reacting to what's in front of them, and it gives us a sense of the peripheral vision that these guys have. Now, if you're not racing in VR, you've got that triple monitor setup, you still have a limiting factor of what you can see out of the side of your car, and so sometimes it is very, very important to see that if we get into an incident where somebody just may not have seen someone. And
there's certainly some corners where going side by side, you need to be able to tell exactly where that other car is, as it can often result in peril for both of you. As we see the small prototype field come down towards turn 6, going to be able to take this one pretty fast in these high downforce machines, especially with the banking and compression that they get heading through there. And then on to the long back stretch, perhaps the most important corner of the lap there, out of turn 7. Kind of curious how this is going to play out, especially for Squirek, since it seems like Ross has been pretty quick today, and he has been able to get the measure of dawn at least once so far in the race this season, so it's not impossible for him to do it again.
No, and I certainly think if you remember back to which race it was that Michael was able to get him, that was Road America, another old school American track, and I think the way these layouts work, they are very, very similar, and so I'm going to put a little bit of an advantage on the Ford GT driver here today, but we will have to see how that plays out once the green flag flies.
Down into the final chicane, added when this track was bought by Don Panos in the 90s, as it used to be a just complete flat-out blast through the dip and up over that crest into the final turn. And the pace car is already in, and Cuero is off early. Green flag is out. Big jump there for the number 79. And behind him, Jeffrey Ooms already slots in the line. In fact, very single file coming into turn 1 for our prototype field. Let's go back to the GTEs.
It's a little bit different in the GTEs. You've got Don Squirk moving to the inside of Michael Ross, wasting no time as they go through turn one. Ross tries to fight back, but it looks like that Ferrari has the advantage here. They come up over the blind crest into turn two. Everybody looking relatively put together as the GTs make their way through.
Turn 3 always a danger zone, especially on the first lap, but they're all past it now. Paulo Munoz struggled a little bit as he falls down to 6. And that was our pole sitter. What happened to Paulo Munoz? He had an off at turn 5. I think he managed not to hit anything, but he not only has our pole sitter in the GT class given up that track advantage, but so has our front row starter and the prototypes.
An absolute disaster of a start for Munoz, but now I was going to say, let's see what he can do on that long backstretch, but not really able to close in to Duino ahead of him.
Guerrero taking the first lap, and he's got a handicap of about a second over his rival already. So things spreading out, but I'm sure he just wants that extra buffer before he starts to hit traffic, because that's going to be a huge talking point throughout today. Not so is the case for Squirek and Ross. Ross clings to him by about 0.3 of a second on this first lap. I have a feeling he wants that top spot back.
I am sure he does, but we'll have to talk about it at some point, Joe, so might as well do it on this second lap. It could be a little bit of fuel-saving strategy here from Michael Ross. If he can't get by Squirek right away, he may just stick up behind the wake of that Ferrari and see what he can do. That is how he was able to drive such a wonderful race in Road America.
Let's see if he gets a good exit out of here. If not, we'll have some time to go and look at the replay of Munoz. And yeah, it doesn't look like Ross really has enough of a slipstream. He's not nearly close enough to Squirek. So let's take a look at Paulo's lap 1, turn 5 and see what caused this off. Did he get some help, or is this his own mistake?
Well, now this is one of the trickier corners on the circuit. Very, very difficult to judge the braking. Looks like, whoa,
bad bounce. Very bad
catch. And I think that was Bournan spinning out behind him as well. So a couple of those LMP drivers suffering some difficulty going through turn 5.
Poor Nick, we had put all the focus on Paulo. We had failed to notice that, yeah, he had a big wreck there, and he's already in pit lane. Munoz up to 5th, so he's gained 1 position over Duino, but he's about 5 seconds behind Guerrero.
Yeah, he is. We check back in on the lead of that GT. Ooh, that's a big spin behind. I believe that is...
O'Donnell Lines.
Yes.
And one of our Porsches, that is Iago Moraes.
And Joe, we talked about how tricky it is to go too wide through the S's. Let's jump back and check out the replay following EJ O'Donnell Lines here.
Not typical where you see offs like that, but yeah, it looked like maybe there was an issue for O'Donnell Lines here. Did he get a slowdown maybe? No, oh, he was just way offline trying to gather that Bimmer back together. The Porsche thought, here's my shot. Unfortunately, it turned out to be a shot into the door panel of the BMW.
Yeah, Joe, and that problem for EJ really started all the way back at the crest of turn 2. The car got a little bit sideways. He was just trying to gather it up back under him. Definitely had to lift off the throttle, do a little bit of recovery braking, and was able to do it.
Got a little bit of a battle with Genet and Lowendick. And Genet taking a peek to the inside of turn 1. Coming up to 3, you don't really usually see passes, but there are brave souls that try it. Not so for this time with that orange and black Porsche.
And now we go into that tricky braking zone of turn 5. You really have to lift off the throttle and let the car coast a little bit before you brake getting in there. That is the best way to get that line in these GTE machines. It is utterly counterintuitive, but it is how it has to get done. And now, Joe, as we watch, just keeping an eye on the relatives here, Quera setting the fastest lap of the race. They are entering turn 2 right now as the GT field is on the backstretch, so it is not going to be too much longer until we get into traffic.
Well, Ooms is behind him by about 0.6 of a second, so he's still in the hunt. but he's got to get closer than that. The traffic is probably just what the doctor ordered for him, as that could back up the leader into his clutches. Once they get to some of the mid-pack, that's where it's honestly going to be the most dangerous, because I'm looking at third on down. Thomas Cope has an absolute train, and that includes Russo, McDonald, Barretto, David, and Lavigiere.
Yeah, it's a really big train for Thomas Cope all the way back. Rafael Russo, definitely one to watch here in that number 22 Ferrari. Russo is a consistent podium finisher. Very, very good, but this is on board with Cope. Oh, you can see just how much that wheel is fighting him around the bumps around Road Atlanta.
Speaking of fighting it, we saw Russo get a little bit sideways there coming over the curb out of turn 5. Thankfully, it didn't get away from him. Another fastest lap from Cuero up at the top of the prototypes. Onto the backstretch here for the fight for third as we watch from the gearbox of Thomas Cope. And here we can see in his onboard, his screen looking forward, trying to weave a little bit to break the slipstream to the 22.
He did a good job. There's not going to be enough room for Russo to attack here going down into turn 10. Very smart driving there from Cope. He knows what he's got to do to try to break that draft and hold on to the third place.
Ooh, a lot of wheel movement. Look at how much that thing is just bouncing around, and it's not that bouncy of a bumpy of a track here. So I'm kind of surprised at how much action we're seeing sawing away.
Yeah, it is a very smooth track surface, Joe, but those curbs can really come out to bite you, and especially in these GT cars, you want to ride them as hard as humanly possible. It really does improve your lap times, but it gives your arms a massive workout.
Up and over turn 5 one more time. Russo still keeps the 64 within his sights, but behind him, Jennifer McDonald has been having a very good race up to top 5. And actually has been a little bit closer to the 22 than the 22 has been to the 64.
Yeah, especially on that last lap. And once again, drawing conclusions back to that Road America race. That was the race that she had a very, very good start, had a couple of issues and fell down the order. So looking like some of these old school American circuits may favor Jennifer McDonald as well.
And she looks very good on the brakes too, as she gets right up on top of that Ferrari. So let's see if maybe she can have an attack and get herself up into 4th. Not the greatest of exits off the final turn, but she can stay patient for now. We're only about 7 minutes into the race. Just an update. We don't need to go to it, but Marc-Andre Desjardins had a wreck out of turn 5 himself. That's in the GT class. He's gotten back racing, but is very damaged.
And so that is going to put him to 18th in that class. We continue to watch this battle starting to separate out a little bit.
Yeah, so let's step away from it for a bit. You saw at the top of your screen another purple lap for Cuero. Behind him, Eisler is feeling from the 666. He's got it down to half a second, and they got another friend, the recovering Paulo Munoz.
He's going to be one to watch out for. And now these guys are going to have another wrinkle added to everything. That's E.J. O'Donnell lines right in front of them. They have caught the stragglers of that GTE field.
Absolutely. And that means that our leaders are now having to deal with that as well, as they pop out to try and find some space around them, and they're going to have a side-by-side battle in front of them soon. Jean-Claude Langlois and Johnny Luna had a little bit of side-by-side into the chicane, so Cuero just went through that. Now as we watch this battle between Eisler, Calquin, and Munoz, does not change positions. Eisler 3rd, Calquin in 4th, and Munoz 5th.
And here is that battle that you were talking about, but there we check back on that. Oh, here comes Calquin with the move on Eisler, trying to get around the outside of turn 1. That's a dangerous move. Calquin's going to have the momentum, and he sticks it.
Woo, Horatio with the guts today. A brave move rewards him with a podium position. And that could have been critical, because we don't know what kind of pace he has compared to Munoz. And if he was being held up, he, of course, could have lost out instead of gaining a spot. So now he has a chance to try to put some distance between himself and Eisler, as well as Paulo Munoz.
Indeed, Joe. We check in there, but let's jump up to the front of this pack. You can see him just in the corner of your screen with Cuero and Ooms. Ooms had a very, very late move going into turn 6 off of that little short-hander. Got some time back up, and now they're trying to get by Pime Jr. That's going to compromise Ooms ever so slightly, but you're already seeing what the traffic is doing. This LMP2 field compressing before our very eyes.
Yeah, now they're coming thick and fast. Cuero is able to go by a Trepanier. So a few more to go. About half the field in the GTEs left to pass for the first time through. Genet, who is just in an awkward position. Didn't do anything wrong there. They've also got Lavigiere just in front of him, and this is where you can get into problems, trying to go by them through the S's, but he managed to put the GT cars between himself and his rival, and that gives him at least a little bit of a buffer.
It does indeed. That's a very heads-up play there from Mauricio Cuero. And now you see that is Lavigiere at the outside. That's Lowendick in front. I think that checked up Cuero ever so slightly. He's going to have a little bit of a compromised line. So is Ooms, though, coming out of the corner. And watch out behind. That's Horatio Calquin, who's been able to catch up on these two leaders as well.
Shows you how quickly things can change. Trying to get a little bit of the slipstream from the GT cars. Mauricio Cuero is now using every trick in the book he can, and it's keeping him ahead of Jeffrey Ooms. Look at this, under braking. Calquin, I'd say we can officially say he's arrived.
I think we can too. Only has about 0.5 of a second up the road to these leaders. That's Barreto that Cuero was able to get around. Now Ooms doing the same thing. Calquin attempting it all the way as well. Big kick up of dirt there from Mauricio Cuero as they make their way up into turn 1. He's going to catch traffic again through the S's.
This is Jennifer McDonald's. And did something happen to Don Squirrek? He's gone away on my screen. I'm not sure if this is a connection issue. Both able to get by McDonald's. Up next is Russo, but this has brought Ooms incredibly close, perhaps the closest we've seen him all race long. This is the perspective from the chasing Calquin in third.
Yeah, you can see them there as they try to navigate their way around traffic through 6 and 7. Just absolutely brutal there for Calquin. That really, really cost him. Ooms doesn't look like he has had much of a problem up ahead, though.
I went and checked, and it looks like Squirrek is having connection issues. I haven't gotten the confirmation that he has dropped it completely, so he could still be out there, but this has been a long time stuck in the ether. And man, I'm impressed with Calquin getting right back up on this after he lost time through the S's.
I very much am as well, and now it's going to be pretty much a two-horse race here for the time being. They only have Michael Ross up ahead of them, and he's about 3.7 seconds up the road from our leader, Mauricio Cuero. Ooms now just trying to stick up behind as much as he can. Calquin's falling back ever so slightly, about 0.8 of a second down. I
honestly hope that Squirrek does not reappear at this stage, and there it is. Throughput fell to an unacceptable level. I was going to say, if Squirrek reappears right as the battling leaders comes by, that could be disastrous for them. So kind of a little bit of a relief for the 79 and the 97. But unfortunate for fans of Dawn. Great news for Michael Ross, because that gap is 7.8 seconds to cope.
It is indeed, and now our leaders in the LMP2 field pick their way past Michael Ross. Already, Mauricio Cuero starting to pull a little bit of an advantage here, getting that gap up to about 0.5 of a second over Jeffrey Ooms.
Round our GT leader. Once again, just a little bit of the bad end of the stick for Horatio Calquin. Back up to about 0.9 of a second behind Jeffrey Ooms. We are barely 15 minutes into this race. Only a third of it has gone by. Some intense stuff for the lead in both classes, even though one has now thoroughly broken up. Don't count anything out at a track such as this.
No, not at all, Joe. And I think in about probably 5 laps time or so, when these LMP2s catch back up to the GTE field, we are going to see more fireworks starting to erupt. I really like the run here that Ooms is putting. He is just getting enough pressure to Cuero up in front to make sure he knows he's there, keeping that gap at about a second. Let's glance down at the mid-pack and the GT cars. Paddy Arsenault
is keeping himself about 0.6 of a second away from Jean-Claude. But look at Johnny Luna with that Corvette all over the back of the 41.
Yeah, very much applying some good pressure here. Good run off the corner for Luna. Little bit squiggly, though, on the throttle. You had to see that overcorrection. And all of that sawing back and forth, Joe, that's very, very strange. I think that's costing him speed ever so slightly. I would expect him to have about a 2-mile-an-hour advantage tucked up behind in the draft.
He's starting to gain now, but he runs out of straightaway. It doesn't mean that it's impossible for him to get it. But yeah, it's very strange just how much he's working on it, even in a straight line. The wheel just constantly chattering away in front of him. Now he's lost quite a bit in that final corner, and the 41 is clear by a full 0.5.
Not to throw wild speculation out there, but I'm going to do it anyways. It kind of seems like Luna's force feedback settings may be a little bit too high. If that's what's happening, it's physically causing the wheel to vibrate in him to sort of overcompensate for it.
Yeah, I think you might be right. That was my first thought as well. But, you know, every driver has their preferences, and maybe Luna likes just a whole lot of feedback on there. And here we go. Let's see if he can get a better one coming out of 7 this time. He's got to set him up. Are they pulling in another one? Yeah, that's Louis Pime Jr. just in front of them. So it's become a 4-car train. Who's got the best shot? And I'd say Luna actually might have the best one by just a hair.
Well, he's certainly going to get the benefit of that sort of triple draft in front of him. Falling back a little bit, he's still slow in a straight line. Langlois has more top-end speed than he does. It looks like it's not till they crest over the hill that draft is really starting to come into effect for the Corvette.
Okay, bizarre circumstances. Paulo Munoz has already taken his stop. Now, I think that's within the pit window, and he's coming out to the track. But this battle, getting a lot closer now. Arsenault sees the 41 just poke his nose down into turn 1, but doesn't make a serious attempt.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a head game there, I think, for Langlois to see what he can do, maybe force Arsenault off the line. And yes, Joe, you are right. Early stop for Munoz. It is within the pit window. He should be able to make it, but we've often seen...
Did he stop? I think that was a penalty. Yeah, that was a drive-through. Munoz, only 15 minutes in, has gotten a drive-through penalty, which means he is extremely tight for a disqualification.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I didn't even think that could be the potential. Oh, our pole sitter just absolutely running afoul of the rules.
Munoz did start in second, so it wasn't quite the pole sitter. That was Cuero, but he held the pole for a long time, and this is the best we've seen from Luna, being right on top of him. He looks to the left and comes back to the racing line. Doesn't feel like he can make it happen.
Yeah, just a little bit struggling with top-end speed there, Joe. I know the Ferrari is a good all-arounder. The Corvette, normally known for getting a little bit of a good bite off the line, so I have to wonder if Luna's running a high downforce setup.
Could be, as we take a glance now at the battle for 5th. This is Barretto and David. David got involved in a little bit of an issue back at Barcelona. Let's see if this one goes better for him and he can claim himself a top 5. We're looking at the onboard with Beretta as we also watch underneath the rear wing.
Indeed. Very, very close there for James David. If he can keep the power down, he should have a good run, and indeed he's able to keep very, very close behind that gap, only about 2.5 tenths of a second. He's starting to pick up a speed advantage here. David definitely has the power for the move if he wants it. Starts to drift to the right. There he goes, trying to eke his nose in there. That's going to be the long way around the corner, but it'll favor back when they get through the second part. Goes for the over-under.
Oh, no.
Oh!
And they come together. Barretto into the wall. David continues on, but that was a big thunk to the front of the car. Here as we watch him return to the track. That's got to be frustration. He's losing a ton of spots. He's already down to 15th.
And indeed, he's going to come into the pits there. I think he's definitely either got some damage or just going to take this time to sort of reset his brain and get back.
So coming back to Genet now. just about 0.8 of a second ahead of Trepanier. This is for P8 in the middle of the race, just about. We're nearly hitting the halfway point.
We are indeed, as Trepanier trying to chase down that orange and black Porsche right there with David just ahead of them. That gap obviously coming down a little bit because of the contact, but important to note that Genet and David are teammates, so they will be in communication here.
Barretto's already getting lapped. Looks like an unusually long pit stop for him. I think the 20 is having to take some extensive repairs from that damage. Let's glance at Cuero because we haven't looked at him in a while. The 79 seems to have shaken those who were running him down before. Jeffrey Ooms about 3.3 seconds back now, and continuing to set incredibly fast laps. A 109.2. That is easily our fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, by about 0.3 of a second. And I think part of the reason that Cuero has been able to get away so easily is the 79, number one, has just been able to put down really, really good laps in clean air. He knows what the traffic can do to him around here. But I think the other part is that Ooms has been having to watch his back mirror. Horacio Calquin only about 0.5 of a second behind him.
Arsenault finally got that 10th place over Luis Pime Jr. And we have another change here. Oh, 3 wide! Almost 3 wide. That was Arlito Cuero, who was just trying to get through and run his own race as Lenoir and Luna were having a tough fight. This all actually started a ways back, but hold on. Before we go to the replay, looks like Luna's got another shot at trying to overtake Jean-Claude. He's going to use that slipstream. Holding in the middle of the track, the 41 then heads off to the racing line on the right side. A little bit of overlap for the Corvette. Breaks deep into the corner, and it looks like he's got it.
He does indeed, and now that is Ooms and Calquin coming up behind them, having to split the difference. Ooh, a little bit of an opposite line there from Ooms. Calquin, everybody's staying out. I believe that was Pime Jr. diving into the pits in front of them.
Yeah, he had a bad run through turn 3, and that just kind of checked him up. It was similar to what we saw before with the incident with, I think it was Ted Lowendick, except in this case, the two did not come together. We're back on Calquin, and he's having a tough time. That was Arsenault just chopping him off, saying, please do not try this at this stage.
Yeah, as a GT driver, that is one of the most terrifying things you can see on the iRacing service is a LMP2 bearing down on you during the S's. He is entitled to do that. He is entitled basically to 2 major lines on the blue flags before people start getting a little bit angry about it. Calquin, nothing he really could have done there. That's just bad luck all around.
Looks like Christian Eisler took his scheduled stop, and he's back out in 6. Duino did as well, so the 5 is on track. They're actually going to be regaining a place soon because Paulo Munoz, even though he's been through the pits, it wasn't for a stop. So he's got to come in and relinquish that soon.
Yeah, and that's going to pretty much permanently relegate him back down the order. But we've got another pitter here. That is Horacio Calquin, the first of our leaders.
Looks like Arnaud Genet also in front of him from the GT cars. Leighton stays out. Ooms stays out. Cuero. Here's the onboard of Calquin getting his service and some refreshment.
There you go. No better time to do it than then. Now, this is always interesting to see, Joe. Look at that steering wheel. Let's see if Horacio decides to make any adjustments as he's coming out. We see sometimes drivers making changes to brake bias as they come out. Looks like he's relatively satisfied. That only little click you saw there was him just turning off the pit speed limiter.
I like that his pit speed limiter actually blinks there on the button, just to remind him. I might need that myself if my buttons actually had lights behind them. He's back on track and running. He returns in 5th place. Let's see if that pit stop gives him any sort of strategic advantage. Still waiting for a number of drivers to come in, actually, as Cuero has stayed out and Ooms is in. So the 97 is on the lane.
Well, this will give us a good idea of exactly what that competition is going to be like. Now, Calquin was stationary in the box for about 13.7 seconds. as we watch here. Waiting in the stall.
So the 97, and looks like Paulo Munoz now actually taking service this time, is in. Leighton also stayed out for another lap. Ooms with a slightly quicker stop. Cal Quinn's coming along, and this is good for Jeffrey Ooms as he was already ahead, so that extends the gap to the 666.
Yeah, great stop there for Ooms. He's got Kwok Nin ahead of him, though, coming through the S's. That could prove a little bit of a problem, slow him down ever so slightly, but you can see them ahead of you in that shot. He's got plenty of time here. The gap looking like it's going to finalize out to just under 3 seconds.
Cuero and Leighton are definitely going long, because it looks like Cuero has cycled back through past the pit lane. He's not coming in yet. Leighton is just approaching it now. I'm watching, and he's also going to keep going. But everybody else in the prototype field that is still running has finished their scheduled stop. Only 7 of them, as we did lose Bernand on that first lap.
Indeed, as there you see working his way past Kwok Nin, going down into there is the third place machine of Jeffrey, that's Cal Quinn right now, trying to get around. A couple of GT drivers in. I see Arsenault and Luna.
With their pit spots being right next to one another. So they're easily hitting their marks, taking some fuel, and should be ready to go in the last 18 minutes. Luna, let's see, how much longer was Luna in there compared to Arsenault? Actually, by a fair bit, by 2 seconds. And that was slower than Luis Pime Jr. So Johnny has lost touch with the 2 that he was fighting with before that set of pit stops, but it did come out in the favor of Arsenault, who exited barely ahead of the 33.
Yeah, exactly. Patty Arsenault is going to be very, very happy about that. Luna there tucking in behind Munoz. Could just be a little bit of a safety mechanism there for Luna, just to overfuel the car ever so slightly. Doesn't want to run the risk of going off. Oh, that's Munoz having a big off.
Wow, what a day for Paulo Munoz. Looks like he had a bit of a mistake and just decided that he doesn't feel like he can continue on for today, so he's towed it to pit lane. Now, I mentioned that things came out very close between Luis and Arsenault. Well, Arsenault, with that advantage, is about 0.2 of a second. They're coming down to the braking for the chicane right now, but Pime Jr. not showing his nose. Oh, but he's got a fantastic run. He might be able to get to the inside. No, not quite.
I gotta say there from Pime Jr., I think if he had just tucked up behind there and run the normal racing line, he could have had a shot going into turn 1. He's gonna have to wait a little bit here, takes a wider angle line, misses the apex ever so slightly, but it allows him to carry a little bit more speed in. Now he's just gonna have to sit back and wait here through the S's, hope that he'll be able to get that all wound up under him. As looking on the screen, Marc-Andre Desjardins coming in as well.
Ferrari versus BMW. Going to get overtaken by our leader, Cuero. Ooh, very wide off of turn 5 for Luis. That was awful sketchy. He caught a fair bit of the dirt there, so he falls back to about a second behind Patrick now.
Yeah, and as I said, Joe, it's very easy to do in that corner. It is deceptively tight. You don't think you need to slow down as much as you do for it. And the fact that there is that massive amount of runoff on the outside, it kind of tricks you into thinking you can carry a whole lot of speed out there, but it's a very, very fine line you have to tread. And we have seen some of the best drivers on the sim, as well as some of the best drivers in the real world, make mistakes there. So Pime joining good company.
Well, this one's split up, so let's give a little bit of love to our leader in the GT class, Michael Ross. Now, this was helped out by Don Skorek losing his connection, but even before that, he had Skorek, what, was it about a few seconds behind him, I want to say, already?
No, I think when Skorek blinked out, Ross was still behind him. But he was keeping it, he was keeping it very, very close. Looked like he may have just been sort of, waiting back for the right moment and the right run out of 6 and 7. But our pole sitter here just driving a very clinical races. We've got Cope and Russo coming into the pits from the GT class.
So it seems the racing god smiling on Ross. giving him the rub of the luck. And you're right, Cope is in, Russo is in, Trepanier also looking for his pit stall. Highest pitter currently is Arnaud Genet, but I think he's going to hand that one over because Cope is already past the cones and accelerating.
And we just heard over the radio that Michael Ross is going to be coming into the pits as well. Something interesting I picked up on during the course of practice, Joe, is that he was practicing that pit entry quite a bit. It's a very tricky pit entry here, and Ross wanted to make sure he got it right.
An important thing. Let's see how much he can maximize it here. Chucking it in. It's almost its own little chicane, one lane, and that looks nice and tidy.
It really does. A good job for Michael Ross as he now gets down to that pit speed limit. Watching behind him, it looks like current second place runner Jennifer McDonald is going to come into the pits as well.
Teddy Lowendick is down the lane. This must be about the end of that pit window here with 13 minutes left, just about 14 minutes. Lavidiere is in. David, looks like Jean-Claude in the 41 is going to come in. Boy, he waited till the last moment for that.
And EJ O'Donnell Lyons coming in as well, so all of your leaders in that GT class opting to come down here. Now let's keep an eye where Thomas Cope is going to come out in response to all of them. Remember, Jennifer McDonald was in second before they went in. Looks like Cope has been able to get by as well as Russo.
And so does Marc-Andre in the 206. So Jennifer returns in a net fourth. Am I seeing that correctly?
You are indeed, Joe. This is by far, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is her best performance we have seen thus far out of her this season.
I need to check the stats and see what she's had so far. And especially, I'm trying to remember what her best finish was last season as well. But yeah, and it's a handy gap back to Ted Lowendick of about 4 seconds. So she's not under pressure currently. She can try and bide her time, really focus on her own race instead of playing defense. Oh, and Leighton is in. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was worried for a second that he'd had a wreck after he was making up for what was a poor qualifying today.
Yeah, well, that is your second in the points to inside Leighton, and so that's really going to change things up for him now as we continue to watch Jennifer McDonald. And Joe, I can say this is her, if she finishes here, this would be her best result of the season. She has not managed a top 5 yet, so this would be her first top 5 of the season.
Awesome stuff there from McDonald. We do have a bit of a battle brewing in the LMP2s. This is Eisler and Duino looking for 4th position. That's Eisler that you see in the red, white, and black machine, and Duino running in the green and black. I'm a little bit disappointed we don't have a camera from David today. I was enjoying the different hats that he tended to put on.
As was I, but right now he is going to be full focused ahead of him on Christian Eisler, whose really woes continue this season. We've often talked about how Christian's been putting in some great qualifying efforts, not really seeming to capitalize on that during the race. Same proving true here today. Little bit loose, though, I have to say, looking from Duino behind him. A lot of wiggle in that car as they make their way past Quacknan. Is he going to try down the inside of one? No, he's not.
Yeah, it looked like Christian got checked up coming out of the final turn. Duino gained a lot, but wasn't able to try and get side by side down into turn 1. 11 more minutes to keep at that and see if he can hack away until he gets himself a little farther into the top 5.
He's got plenty of time. That car, like I said, looking a little bit loose. That would indicate to me that he may have a little bit less downforce in the car. If that's the case, let's see how he does down this backstretch as he may be able to get a good run on the Iceman.
That doesn't look good here. He was just way far back out of turn 7. And these things do punch a decent hole in the air, but I don't think quite that big. 10 minutes left to go, and the battle is on for 4th place. Pretty much our closest battle on the track currently, from what I can tell. Everything else has started to drift away from one another. If you're just joining us, Mauricio Cuero leads from the pole here in round 6 of the PRL Sportscar Series. And Michael Ross also leads from the pole, but wasn't always up there. He had lost the lead to Don Squarick, who unfortunately disconnected.
Yeah, very much. I think it'll be a disappointment there from Michael Ross that Don DC'd as well. We've heard many times how much he has just absolutely loved the battle with Squarick, and so definitely getting a little deprived of that here today, but he will be very, very happy with an incredible romp on the field.
Yeah, 13 seconds over Cope, but I hate to have to reiterate it, but this is a track that can bite you so easily that he's got to keep his head on a swivel and make sure that he stays focused, because otherwise traffic could certainly cost him what looks like a very likely race win.
Well, and some of that traffic is in his own class, Joe. I believe that's Kwok Nin and the other Ford GT in the field right up ahead of him. So he is now, the shoe is on the other foot for Michael Ross, as he is now the one going for the overtake on slower cars.
Something I thought that we'd have to talk about, but here we are. And Nin has usually been pretty good about these things, though. I expect him to pull out of the way for our class leader once he gets close enough that he's being hampered by the 239. Looking to see if we've had any really good hard chargers, and really, there hasn't been much of that, if I'm honest, at least in the prototype class. And there you can see letting him by it, and then just easily getting out of the way on the front stretch for Ross to slip through. Did we have anybody do much in the way on the GT class? Maybe a hard charger there.
I think the best I'm seeing here, Joe, is Ted Lowendick up 6 spots into 5th place, but we're a lot used to seeing a little bit higher of a run, but that's not to take away from Teddy, who is driving a very, very consistent and good race here.
Going on board here with Teddy, watching as he keeps his focus. So down through the S's. This is not a pass 4 position. This is Lou Barretto, who is 13 laps down from the overall leader, 4 laps down, I think, from his class leader. He knows it. He's just going to let Teddy by.
Yeah, and you can see as Teddy went by, Barretto, despite all that time spent in the pits, still has some rear wing damage to attest with. So if he hadn't gotten out of the way there, he would have been an absolute sitting duck for Ted Lowendick.
Now, O'Donnell Lines has suddenly reeled in Jean-Claude Langlois very, very quickly. They just got overtaken by Duino, who briefly interrupted the fight. Can the BMW get the run that he wants? It looks like he can. The Ferrari might be under attack by the time they hit the chicane.
Might indeed, EJ. Just focusing in here, trying to put minimal inputs on the wheel to keep that car as straight as possible and take as much advantage of the draft. Starts to close again at the crest of the hill. Doesn't seem like it's enough, but he's going for a very late diving move. Gets to the inside. Where did he come from, Joe?
Where did he go? Up into 10th place there. So EJ O'Donnell Lines certainly has the bit between his teeth. Now he's got to make up about 3 seconds to get up to Vincent Trepanier, which is not impossible, but it'll be a very tough task to make up in about 3 or 4 laps here.
It very much will, but remember, this is a recovery drive from EJ, getting involved in a little bit of an incident earlier on. He is actually down 7 positions from his starting place of 3rd, but a very, very good job to keep his head down.
So we're watching Eisler and Duino before now. They drifted apart, but it looks like David has buckled in and upped his pace. Was down to 0.6 of a second. It wasn't a great exit off of turn 7, and it's gone back up to 0.8 of a second now. He'll pull the slipstream off of Marc-Andre. Marc just keeping himself nice and steady in a line so that he doesn't scare off the number 5.
Yeah, definitely wants to be good and consistent with that. Ooh, that's a little bit of a checkup from Eisler, I think, coming through turn 12 there. That could hurt him a little bit. Gap now under a second at holding at about 0.56.
We're getting information from Don Squirick that his power went out from a storm. One of the many woes of sim racing, but it just happens sometimes. Now, we saw O'Donnell Lines take tenth away from Jean-Claude, but Jean-Claude is sticking with him, and they're being joined by the BMW of Patrick Arsenault on top of it.
Going to jump on board here with Patrick Arsenault. You can see him fighting his way through the S's, that tricky turn 5 like we talk about. Everybody getting a good run there. Looked like maybe a little bit of a squirrel there for Langlois ahead of him, but he's able to keep it pointed the right way.
Let's hope it's just a squirrel and not a squirrek, and he doesn't get disconnected in the midst of this action. Down the back stretch, the 24 still holding on to 10th place. Patrick Arsenault in the 925 sees a Ferrari in front of him. It's a Ferrari sandwich, essentially, with two BMWs as the bread here today. Oh, lock up down into the chicane for O'Donnell Lines, and you can see how much that hurt him because that blue and white Ferrari is now right on top of him.
EJ just sticks to the racing line, though, doesn't give Langlois anywhere to go. I think he's a little too far back. He pokes his nose out on turn 1, but that's a little bit of a scare tactic, but that's going to compromise his run out of turn 1. You saw there Arsenault able to close up a little bit. Now breaking into 2 and 3, Arsenault definitely starting to close here, and Langlois starting to lose a little bit of touch with EJ O'Donnell Lines.
So they spread apart once again, down to 3 minutes to go. And Mauricio's actually heading towards the line now. They do about 1:09. It is not very long laps around this circuit. So he is looking, you know what? This is actually going to be extremely close on how many laps are left. And whenever that happens, you kind of have to hope that everybody has calculated in for a potential extra lap.
Exactly, and especially considering, Joe, we haven't seen a whole lot of cars, frankly, running like this through the majority of the race, being able to save a little bit of fuel down the straights. I get the sense a lot of guys are going flat out here today, and that may really adversely affect their fuel calculations if we go that extra lap.
So what does this do for the championship? Well, for Mauricio Cuero, it'll continue to extend his gap over Tiensai Leighton, who's having a very bad day. Well, in relative terms, a very bad day. 6th position will still net him decent points, but he's last of the runners currently. Just doesn't seem to have the same consistent we've seen earlier on. But as for the championship in the GT class, Michael Ross, because of this DNF for Squirek, is going to gain, but not as much as you would imagine, because there is a drop week that is still in the pocket of Don Squirek, which this one is now going to become his 0, which will not count. His lowest score was a 33. That was in round 3 for Don Squirek.
Well, that's going to mean for Squirek, though, is that he is going to have to be doubly careful going forward. He cannot afford another 0 points week, so he's going to have to be absolutely driving on eggshells through the rest of the season to make sure he can maximize points if he wants to take on this championship.
That's our leader, Mauricio Cuero. And again, it's a 1:09 lap. He's got, what, less than 30 seconds to get there. He's on the backstretch. I think this is going to be 2 laps to go. He puts another lap down on Luis Pime Jr., who's unfortunately down in 14th now. Around the chicane, up and over the crest. And yes, this is 2 laps to go for Mauricio Cuero.
All right, so that fuel calculation that we talked about, drivers are just now going to be figuring that out, and we'll have to see if anybody does some crazy lifting here out of fear of missing their fuel number.
Yeah, trying to think, guys like Ross were right behind him, so he gets an extra lap on top of it as well. And Ross cut it pretty close. He was one of the quicker drivers on pit lane, so he could have short fueled slightly. This Eisler-Duino battle for 4th is still in favor of Christian Eisler in the 727, the red, white, and blue Punto car that you see.
Yeah, Eisler getting a good exit there. Out of 5. Duino knows he is filling his mirrors here, so he's got to just keep that pressure on. You can see just how much speed there these prototypes take through 2 and 3, or 6 and 7 rather.
Mauricio Cuero comes through the chicane. Is he going to try and time this? Almost wonder if he's slowing it down a little bit here, but it's not going to be enough. And there he goes across the line. White flag now out. Literally 1 second to spare.
All right, there from Mauricio. Very clearly knows what he wants to do with that. One more time around this tricky circuit. That's Johnny Luna ahead of him that he's got to get by, able to do it before he dives into the S's.
Ooh, Duino's very close to Eisler coming down into the first corner. Eisler actually goes defensive into that turn. Could we see an over-under? Not quite. David can't carry the speed.
Not able to do it, but he is still the closest we've really seen him to Christian at this point. Now he's going to lose a little bit of downforce coming through the S's, but he knows exactly where he needs to get the power on. Now this is Michael Ross and Luis Pime Jr. right ahead of them, slower GT cars.
This is our closest battle, and it's for a top 5. Pretty good points able to be hauled home depending on where you finish between these two. But we're going to have to duck away from the fight because Mauricio Cuero will get win number 5 on the season out of 6 rounds. Victory here in Road Atlanta. Right behind him is both Michael Ross and that fight we were watching between Duino and Eisler. It looks like Eisler's got this one under control, and indeed he does. He'll claim 4th place from there. As behind him, the 67 of Michael Ross gets his 2nd win of the season at a crucial time in the championship.
And we check back in on that battle. We've been following E.J. O'Donnell, Lines, Jean-Claude Langlois, and Patrick Arsenault. A little bit more time to let this all play out.
Spin. That's Jean-Claude in the 41 that goes around. Doesn't hit anything, but he loses a few positions, and he'll have to settle for 11th.
Heartbreaking to see that, and that's really, I think, going to deprive us of a battle here. Those cars now all separated out a little too far.
Great job by O'Donnell Lines, who's going to finish in 9th in class here. So as he comes across, we are going to go to a quick break. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. So stick around. welcome back to Road Atlanta. Round 6 in the PRL Sportscar Series went to Mauricio Cuero. He's taken the lion's share of wins. In fact, he's now claimed half of them, no matter what happens in the rest of the season. That gives him a pretty big gap over the next car down. Jeffrey Ooms was in second behind him, with Horatio Calquin finishing third, and Christian Eisler in fourth. Not many changes in positions for most of these drivers. David Duino took P5, and Tiensai Layton, who was second in the championship coming in, might not still have that after today. He finished sixth in the end.
In that GTE category, Michael Ross able to pick up the win. Obviously, the big story, though, is the technology gremlins and power gremlins hitting Don Skorek and knocking him out of the race. But behind Michael Ross, Thomas Cope and Rafael Russo rounded out your podium, with Jennifer McDonald and Ted Lowendick in fourth and fifth. Behind them, Gabriel Lavadier and Arnaud Genet were followed by Vincent Trepanier, EJ O'Donnell Lines, and Patrick Arsenault in 10th. 11th was Jean-Claude Langlois, followed by Johnny Luna, James David, and Luis Pime Jr. Quacknin was behind them, followed by Marc-André Desjardins, and then Lou Barretto, who came back for some early damage to get the car back out on track and finish the race.
And that takes us to our winner in the GT class, and that was Michael Ross with his second win of the season. Michael, this one was definitely given to you a little bit of an advantage since your rival kind of disappeared from the track. But what I found interesting was that you put it on pole. You were faster in the warm-up, but then you lost the lead right away. What happened there?
I kind of wish I knew, actually. Don got an awesome start. I tried to time it as good as I could and I cut across his nose. But that Ferrari was unbelievable up out of the last chicane, and he just got a really good run into turn one. And I had told him before we went, before the race started, that, we looked like we had the pace between the two of us, and let's just make a break and then settle it amongst ourselves. So I guess he figured that taking the lead was the way to go.
Well, and we also wondered, before he disappeared, you did look like you were content. Were you going to try and save a little bit of fuel? You did have a very quick stop in there.
It's funny because I actually took more fuel than I had originally set it for. Once Don disappeared, I was plenty content to follow. As long as I could keep it within a half second or 0.6. I was good with that. Try to save a little bit. It's amazing what a tenth of a gallon will mean around here. So yeah, I was good with that, and I thought I was faster up through turn 1, 2, and 3, and then he kind of had it towards the back end. So it was shaping up to be real good, and try to settle it after the pit stops. But, it's a shame that it worked out that way. I think we were fixing to have a really good race.
I don't know how aware you were of what the lap number was going to be like, or what it was expected to be, but we were actually a second shy of it being one lap less. How close were you on fuel?
I had a gallon left at the end. I had enough for 37 laps.
Wow.
Like I said, yeah, I took an extra click of fuel just before the pit stop. I changed it like midway. So I was good on fuel. If it went 37, I was fine. If it went 35, it was cool. I figured it would be 36. I was looking at the IMSA series during the week, and then just kind of, I have my own way of calculating it where I just sort of pick a lap time and hope for the best, and it worked out. 36 was what I thought it was going to be, and it's weird when you have the full pace lap. You never really know. I was trying to actually save a little bit on the pace lap, but I had plenty of fuel, and then following down, we were good. So I wound up with I did a whole extra lap to come around, and I still had like a half a gallon or something left.
That's impressive. Great call on that. Who do you want to thank that helped make this second victory of the season possible?
You guys, GSRC for broadcasting us, PRL for the league. Taking maximum points here was this one was very important. I knew coming in we had a chance. The Ford's good here, and it was crucial to take maximum points here because there's a couple of races coming that I know the Ferrari is going to be very, very good. And just a shout out to Richard Dewberry on the forums, actually, for pointing out something in my setups that I had been running for a long time, but he pointed something out to me and I changed it, and it maybe added a tenth to the pace, but it brought all the tire wear problems right back in line. So that was crucial. That helped immensely. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you all at Hockenheim.
Love to see that camaraderie and sportsmanship on the forums. That was our winner in the GTEs. Michael Ross up next. Second was Thomas Cope, and DJ has caught up with him.
Thomas, you managed to bag a third place last time out and a second place here. It's got to be good to be riding a little bit of momentum.
Yeah, it's definitely feeling a lot better. I mean, it came with a lot of luck. Obviously, Don had his issue. Obviously, if I could, I would virtually give my trophy to Don for that P2. He deserved to be up in the first or second. And obviously, Michael didn't want to win it that way. I messaged him that. But it is what it is. Obviously, I hope he's okay with the a lot of the storms have been having in that area. But yeah, P2, Rafael Russo did an amazing job. He kept me honest. I couldn't even shake him. He did an amazing job behind me. I had to just keep as perfect as I could.
I was actually going to ask you about that because I was keeping an eye on Rafael coming up behind you. When you're in the sim like that, I mean, how much are you consciously checking that virtual mirror behind you, or how much are you just going, okay, I can't think about that, I've just got to focus?
Consciously, I know I've got to check the mirrors. Obviously, it comes with a bit of driving in general, but I like to know knowing the LMP2s come in. Obviously, Russo, I kept seeing Russo in the mirror. And it kept me honest. I was like, I can't make a mistake. Anything that happens here, Russo is going to be right behind me. And I knew Russo would have had me if I made a mistake. He had such good pace when he was with me. And yeah, it's just unlucky. I broke the gap. I broke the toe. And he struggled to keep up. And I kept it perfect enough to keep him behind me.
Well, you said when we chatted last week that it was really, your goal to sort of get rid of those bad luck gremlins and keep some good consistency. Heading to Hockenheim next week, we've seen a lot of craziness on GSRC happen around the Hockenheim ring. Do you think you can keep it up?
I'm hoping I can. I mean, this was a bit of a bad one for me. I actually remember last time I was on GSRC here at this track, I actually went flipping through the air on Racing Edge, taking out some of the leaders as well of the higher class. Unfortunate for those guys, but yeah, a lot of momentum from this one. I'm going to take it into the next race and look for the same and hope for some good consistency and have some good pace up at the top of the field, hopefully.
We'll be watching for you for sure, my friend. Anybody you'd like to thank for this second place here tonight?
I'd like to thank Russo for keeping it clean at the start, and the guys, all the guys, you guys for the broadcast. You do an amazing job. PRL obviously for the lead, they do an amazing job running it. Obviously my Olympus boys, go and check out olympusesports.com if you want to register and be a part of our team. We do a lot of stuff, and all of them for helping me out with setups and practicing. Mike Logren, pro IMSA driver, who's doing the Pro Series this coming week here at Road Atlanta. He's helped me out a lot with pace. And the biggest one, Charles Michel, who's in my ears all the time, in the spot, is helping me out behind the scenes.
Well, excellent, Thomas. Congratulations again. And now Joe Peak has caught up with our third place finisher in GTE, Rafael Russo.
Indeed. And Rafael, before the traffic of the LMP2s came the first time through, you had Jennifer McDonald all over your rear end, it seemed like, for a long time.
Yeah, man. Jennifer had a good pace at the first part of the race. And this race was really difficult because the track is, really hard to overtake and really hard to keep the pace, so you have to be 100% focused. And every lap I was looking in the mirror and seeing Jennifer really close, so I can't commit any mistakes. And also trying to reach for Cope that had a great performance too. I'm really happy for him. But fortunately, Don has some issues, I think, with weather, and he didn't complete the race. But Michael had a great pace and a great race as well, so he also deserves this win. this victory.
Yeah, it seems like that's the sentiment we've been hearing from a couple of the drivers that just seemed like he would have probably been at least on the podium. Speaking of which, though, your teammates didn't have the greatest of days. It looks like L1 Esports might take a little bit of a hit in the team points. What do you three feel like you can do to try and rally back together?
Yeah, I told the guys, let's survive. Let's survive. We need to survive here because we can make some good points. But it is what it is. Sometimes you commit mistakes, and also with the traffic, it's really hard to handle. And I think Luciano had some mistakes in a corner, and also Luis. But we need to practice more to Hockenheim to try to achieve a better team result.
No doubt. Well, speaking of Hockenheim, we're going to another track with a lot of paved runoff, and the incident limits are very strict in this series. Are you at all concerned about that? Because we even had at least Paulo Munoz got a penalty within the first 15 minutes, even here at Road Atlanta.
Yeah, you need to be prepared for that. For example, if we had only 3 incidents, we gain an extra point. So I think Michael had only 1 today. I had only 1. So you need to change a little bit your driving style for some corners to try to avoid the off track. And for Hockenheim will be the same. We need to find a way to be fast and to avoid some incidents. But it will be a great race. Hockenheim has a long straight and that had a lot of draft, and I think we'll see some overtakes. Different from here. Here's a really tough track. Like I said last week, I think to GJ, this is like Monaco. You don't know what's going on in the end of the race. You don't know who's gonna win because you can die anytime. So, but I'm looking forward to Hockenheim. I think it'll be a great race. I like all these ones.
I certainly like this set of tracks that we've had lately myself. Congratulations on a third, Rafael, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you in Germany.
Yeah, man. Thank you for all the teammates, and thank you for PRL and also you guys.
Rafael Russo with a third today. That's going to wrap us up. So, of course, we want to thank our sponsors, starting with Simulation Motorsports Affinity. Find out how you can bridge the gap between virtual and real motorsports at SIMMSA.net. And, of course, NinjaTrader. It's always free to use for advanced charting, backtesting, and trading simulation. Visit NinjaTrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance. And, of course, Butt Kicker. Feel what you've been missing and check them out at thebuttkicker.com. Of course, we also want to thank the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. Additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen to find her Bandcamp. And thanks to the team today, DJ, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Also, check out our social media through the outlets listed at the bottom of the screen. And if you'd like to support us, check out our merchandise store as well at simracingmerch.com/GSRC. We got a link in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment here on the Global Sim Racing channel, because next week we're going to Hockenheim Tuesday, May 11th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. In just a little bit, we're heading off to Australia. Phillip Island has the Flying Huskies at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.